My name is Emma. I'm 34-year-old. People often describe me as kind, caring, and dependable. They say I have a beautiful smile and a warm heart. But they do not know the truth. My smile hides a tired soul. Every morning, I wake up before the sun rises. I prepare breakfast, wash the dishes, clean the house, and make sure everyone has everything they need. I answer phone calls from relatives who need help. I listen to friends who want advice. I work hard at my job and come home to more responsibilities. I am always doing something for someone. I cannot remember the last time I did something just for myself. Sometimes I stand in front of the mirror and stare at the woman looking back at me. She has tired eyes and dark circles under them. Her smile looks forced. I ask myself, who are you? I do not know the answer. When I was younger, I had dreams. I wanted to travel to beautiful places. I wanted to write stories and learn to play the piano. I wanted to sit by the sea and watch the sunset without worrying about anyone else. But life happened. Little by little, I gave my time to others. I gave my energy, my dreams, and even my happiness away. I became the person everyone depended on. Whenever someone needed help, I was there. I thought love meant sacrificing everything. I thought being a good daughter, friend, and colleague meant putting myself last. Years passed, and I became a stranger to myself. One evening, after another long and exhausting day, I sat alone at my kitchen table. The house was quiet. A cup of tea grew cold beside me. I opened my notebook and wrote the simple words. I stared at the page. For the first time in many years, tears slowly rolled down my cheeks. I realized something painful. I had spent my entire life living for everyone else. And somewhere along the way, I had forgotten how to live for myself. The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes. I had cried myself to sleep, something I had not done in years. I looked at the notebook on my bedside table. The word me was still there. I quickly closed it. I did not want to think about myself. There was too much to do. My phone rang. It was my younger sister. Emma, can you pick up my children after school? I have an important meeting. I looked at the clock. I had planned to rest after work. Of course, I replied. A few minutes later, my mother called. Emma, I need help buying groceries today. Sure, Mum. Then a friend sent me a message. I need someone to talk to. Are you free tonight? I typed my answer immediately. Yes. By lunchtime, my entire day belonged to other people. As usual, nobody asked if I was tired. At work, I smiled and completed my tasks. My colleagues often said, Emma, you're amazing. You can handle everything. I smiled again. But inside, I wanted to say, I cannot handle everything. I was exhausted. After work, I collected my sister's children, bought groceries for my mother, and listened to my friends' problems for nearly 2 hours. When I finally returned home, it was almost midnight. The house was silent. I looked around and suddenly felt empty. I realized something strange. I knew everyone's favorite food, their fears, their dreams, and their problems. I knew exactly what made them happy. But I did not know myself anymore. I could not remember my favorite hobby. I could not remember what made me excited. I could not remember the last time I laughed without pretending. I sat on the sofa and closed my eyes. A memory suddenly appeared in my mind. I was 20 years old, sitting beside the sea. I was smiling, writing stories in a notebook, and dreaming about the future. That girl looked happy. I opened my eyes and whispered softly, "Where did you go?" No one answered. Only silence filled the room. For the first time, I wondered if carrying everyone's burdens had slowly become my own prison. A few days later, I woke up feeling tired again. My body was heavy, and my mind felt crowded. I had slept for 7 hours, but it seemed as if I had not rested at all. I stood in front of the mirror and looked at myself. "You are fine," I said. But I did not believe my own words. I went to work as usual. I smiled at everyone and completed my tasks. Throughout the day, my phone kept ringing. Someone needed advice. Someone needed a favor. Someone wanted my help. I answered every call. By evening, I felt completely drained. On my way home, I stopped at supermarkets at Mom. While standing in line to pay, my sister called. "Emma, can you babysit the children tomorrow? I need to go somewhere." I closed my eyes for a moment. "Okay," I replied softly. As soon as the call ended, another message appeared on my phone. "Can you help me this weekend?" I stared at the screen. Suddenly, my hands began to shake. I felt like I could not breathe. I left my shopping trolley and walked outside. I sat on a bench near the parking area. Then it happened. I started crying. I cried quietly at first. Then I cried harder. Years of exhaustion, disappointment, and loneliness poured out of me. People walked past me, but I did not care. I was tired. Tired of always being strong. Tired of always saying yes. Tired of pretending that I was okay. For the first time in my life, I admitted something to myself. I needed help too. I was not a machine. I was not made of endless strength. I was simply a person who had forgotten her own needs. After a long time, my tears finally stopped. I looked up at the dark sky. Then I whispered something I had never said before. "I matter too." The words sounded strange, but deep inside my heart, they also sounded true. And that night, sitting alone on a bench under the stars, I realized something important. Maybe loving others should never mean losing yourself. The morning after I broke down, I felt different. I was still tired, but something inside me had changed. The words I had whispered under the stars kept repeating in my mind. I matter too. I stood in front of the mirror again. This time, I looked into my own eyes for a long moment. I looked tired. I looked sad. But I also looked like someone who wanted to be found again. At work, my phone rang. It was my friend, Lily. "Emma, can you help me organize my party this weekend?" She asked cheerfully. Normally, I would say yes immediately. The word was already on my lips. But I remembered myself crying on that bench. I remembered the loneliness. I took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, Lily," I said gently. "I need to rest this weekend." There was silence. Then she replied, "Oh, okay." I ended the call and waited. I expected guilt. I expected shame. But instead, I felt something surprising. Relief. It was small, but it was there. That evening, my sister called. "Emma, can you babysit tomorrow?" I closed my eyes. Like I said softly, "I need some time for myself." Another silence. Finally, she answered, "All right. I'll find another arrangement." The world did not end. Nobody became angry. Everything was fine. I sat quietly after the call and almost laughed. For years, I had been afraid of disappointing people. I thought saying no would make others stop loving me. But perhaps I had been wrong. Later that night, I opened an old drawer. Inside was a notebook I had not touched in years. I slowly opened it. Stories, poems, little dreams, written by a younger version of me. As I turned the pages, tears filled my eyes again. I had forgotten this part of myself. I loved writing. I loved creating stories. I picked up a pen and wrote one sentence. "Dear Emma, welcome back." I smiled through my tears. It was not a big step. I had not changed my whole life in one day. But, for the first time in many years, I had chosen myself. And somehow, that small decision felt like taking my very first breath, after being underwater for a very long time. Several weeks passed. Life did not suddenly become perfect. People still called me for help. Problems still appeared. Responsibilities still waited for me every day. But something inside me was changing. I was changing. I started waking up 30 minutes earlier each morning. Instead of cleaning or checking my phone, I made myself a cup of tea and sat near the window. I watched the sunrise. I listened to the birds. I breathed slowly. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to be still. I also started writing again. Every night, I wrote something in my notebook. Sometimes I wrote stories. Sometimes I wrote about my feelings. Sometimes I simply wrote one sentence. I am learning to love myself. At first, it felt strange. I had spent so many years believing that my value came from helping others. I thought resting was selfish. I thought choosing myself was wrong. But I was beginning to understand something important. You cannot keep giving from an empty heart. One evening, I looked at an old photograph of myself. I was 20 years old, sitting beside the sea with a notebook in my hands. She looked hopeful. She looked alive. I smiled at the photograph. "I'm finding you again," I whispered. A few days later, I did something I had dreamed of for years. I went to the beach alone. The sky was painted orange and gold. Waves gently touched the shore. I sat on the sand and watched the sunset. There was no phone in my hand. No responsibilities. No one asking for anything. Dummy. For a long time, I listened to the sound of the sea. Then I closed my eyes and smiled. I finally understood something that had taken me many years to learn. Loving others is beautiful. Helping others is wonderful. But losing yourself in the process is not love. It is forgetting that your heart matters too. As the sun slowly disappeared below the horizon, I made myself a promise. I would continue to care for others. But from now on, I would also care for myself. Because I deserve kindness. I deserve rest. I deserve happiness. And for the first time in a very long time, I was no longer living for everyone but myself. I was finally learning how to live for me.